roller coasters back and forth, but it's going to end strong. We've gotten past hump day, and I'm looking forward to speaking, but I'm also looking forward to sharing with you a message from my heart, from experiences that I learned. It was a tough experience, but I learned it well. At least I hope I learned it well. I think I learned it well. But as I began to think about it last night, after reading a particular article in Forbes magazine, I think maybe it was Fast Company, I began to see how that lesson fit into place. And I give all praise and all credit to God. So, hey everyone, good afternoon. My name is Tim Allston. I am the host of the 10 Commandments of Leadership. This is the show where I, as a leadership strategist, as a 4-time Amazon best-selling author, and as a recovering egoholic, seek to do two things. Number one, I want to educate. Our team and I want to equip, and our team and I want to empower you as emerging leaders with God thought leadership. Once again, a leader is not determined by a title or position. Leadership is determined by two main things: influence and relationships. So yes, you are an emerging leader. The second thing I want to get over to you is we want to present current events and newsmakers in the light of best practices from the Bible. And today is no exception. We're going to end this week strong. And I've even got a homework assignment for you for this weekend, so stay tuned. This episode of the 10 Commandments, I'm entitling What I Learned About Leadership While Working in What I Called a Digital Sweatshop. A digital sweatshop. And this is what I mean. I'll share with you how a tech job that I absolutely hated became one of the most defining leadership classrooms for me in my entire professional life. Benjamin Franklin once said, "That which pains us instructs us." And he was ever so right about that. And why was it the most defining leadership classroom in my life? Because at that point, in that experience, I stopped fighting. And instead, I started listening. But now let me take you back some 20 years and then let's come forward. Let's go back to 2009. I found myself in one of the most unexpected and most uncomfortable roles in my life, and that was working in technical support at DirecTV. Now, I had zero background with any of this DirecTV equipment. Even though we as DirecTV employees had, as part of our benefits package, we had complimentary DirecTV services into our home, I chose not to get it. We chose not to get it because I didn't want, well, how should I say it? I didn't want those channels and that programming coming into our house for my wife and me before our 5-year-old daughter. And so I chose that. So I did not have a hands-on knowledge with the equipment. I had no equipment at home to practice on in terms of being able to talk to the customers. So I was at a disadvantage, and I hated the job. I hated the job. But I was there, under pressure, in the furnace of frustration. And that I was there, I learned one of the most important, powerful leadership truths. Listening beats forcing. Listening beats forcing. In fact, I was reminded of this very recently by a Fast Company article that I read this week, where a CEO turned freelance writer stated that listening is everything. And from his or her perspective, the CEO asked the question, where do leaders listen best? On the front line. And on the front lines is with their customer service representatives. These are, and I can tell you from experience, I didn't read this, I wrote this. This was written in my own experience. They are your real-time empathy agents. They're the people who hear customers' pain points, they solve their problems, and they absorb the tension from these clients. If you want to grow as a leader, start with the people who are doing the listening. And that brings me to my breakthrough moment. It's even painful to talk about it now, but like I said, Benjamin Franklin said, that which pains us instructs us. It was August 2009. and it was 110 degrees, and we were there in Phoenix, Arizona. Okay. I was there with our 5-year-old daughter while her mother was there coordinating a national conference of religious leaders. I was sitting there at the Phoenix Zoo in that unforgiving and insufferable heat, watching our daughter play, making fast friends, and playing. Now, while I sat there, I was kind of like Moses out there in the desert herding sheep. And I was at a real point of frustration. I've been there at DirecTV. I've been there for about two and a half years. Totally frustrated. And then they had me working now in technical support. I had no skills. I had no interest. But I always knew in the back of my mind, begrudgingly, that God had me there for a reason. Now, other jobs had come up. It was a large company, the number 2 company for cable services in the country, arguably the world. So other job openings would come up that were more in line with the skill set that I brought into DirecTV. But every time I applied, even when I became a finalist for interviews, I would get rejected. I mean, there were several times that I applied for jobs. And as soon as I put the application in, filled it out completely, and hit the submit button, within 2 minutes, it rejected it. It didn't make sense to me, not human sense, but I said, okay, God, your hand is in this. So I'm getting frustrated. I'm working in technical support. I'm hating the job to the extent that our daughter's mother had even suggested I need to go see a therapist about depression, because I hated the job, and I began to realize how some people who work jobs for years and decades work in jobs and hate them, and they turn to alcohol and other kinds of things. That had not been my issue. However, I still hated the job. So I'm out there in the middle of the desert, 110 degrees, Phoenix, Arizona, at the zoo, daughter's playing, having a wonderful time. And I'm there having a conversation with God. Why? Why do you have me in that godforsaken place? That place is nothing but, and that's when I came up with the term, a digital sweatshop. Why do you have me working there? Why? What have I done? And it was almost as though, no, it was, I audibly heard God saying to me out there in the desert, why are you there, Tim? You're going to be there until I choose to move you. If and when I choose to move you. That changed everything. I mean, I began to liken myself to Moses at the burning bush. It changed everything. When I heard that from God, I said, oh, that's when I stopped seeing DirecTV as punishment and started seeing it now as preparation. It was then that I stopped fighting and then started listening. And God heard my plea because I submitted myself to him in this situation that I call at the University of DirecTV. By that December, which is 4 months later, I was then transferred, no longer in technical support. I was now transferred into the customer retention group, CRG as it's called. And that was the place where when a customer would call and say, I want to disconnect my account, we then would talk with them, negotiate them, hear what the problem was, really try to ferret out the issue and see what we could do to resolve it, not lose the customers. Here was where my real gifts, communication, negotiation, empathy, could breathe again. And it worked. After being just in there for just about 3-4 months, I was then in January of 2010, I was then flown to Hollywood to represent all of our CRG agents, all of our customer retention group agents, to represent us from our Huntsville call center to speak at, get this, the National Conference for DirecTV's 1,400 sales and marketing representatives. That was nothing but God rewarding me for finally stop fighting him and start listening. But then it got even a little bit better than that. I'm there, and they have picked representatives from all across the country. And so I was one of two from the Huntsville office. And these are people who had worked for DirecTV, worked for CRG. So we were kind of like the Bible analogy, like Daniel and the Hebrews. I don't call them boys anymore because these were black men, the Hebrews. So we were the best of the best. The difference was that I had never had DirecTV. I had never had it in my home, did not want it in my home, didn't want it near my home. And I'm with all these people, so I just love DirecTV. And I said, okay, Lord, you got me in this position. You got me here in front of all these folk. I'm here to represent you. I don't have this kind of experience and passion that they have. You're going to have to give me your words. And when they handed me the microphone, I'll never forget it. They handed me the microphone. And I said, gave them my name. And I said, everything I do comes out of a religious, a biblical, or church bias. Place got quiet. I said, I look at CRG, Customer Retention Group, as that when the call comes on the line with us, people call us like a person coming to church. Persons go to church with an expectation of being saved. And so therefore, when a customer gets on the line with me, like church, they have an expectation of being saved. And those 1,400 sales and marketing reps stood up and applauded. The senior vice president came up to me afterward, grabbed me and hugged me. And she said, Tim, that was fantastic. She said, I have just texted that word all across the system. The new mantra is CRG is like church. People come to us with this expectation of being saved. That was nothing but God speaking to me and through me, and in this case, kind of in spite of me. It showed me that his hand was on me. He never took his hand off me. And the team applauded. I recognized the fact that that moment wasn't about me. It was about my surrender. It was about my listening. It was about letting go and letting God, even when I felt misaligned. Now, the story doesn't end there. 3 months later, after soaring high, I was fired. I was fired. Yes, that was one of those 13 times I'd been fired in my career. But interestingly enough, I saw God's hand all over me. So speaking of being fired those 13 times, here's a homework assignment that I have for you for this weekend. I've just posted on my YouTube channel a video entitled, I was fired 13 times. I was fired 13 times. Now I train leaders to manage their egos. Again, my YouTube channel, the video, I was fired 13 times. Now I train leaders to manage their egos. I want you to check out that video, the message I have there, and please leave me your comments. Okay, fair enough? I'll look to hear from you. But again, as I say, as painful as that firing was, I nonetheless saw God's hand over me in all of that. And here's what I mean. 14 years later, I guess we're talking about September of last year, I ran across the person from DirecTV who had interviewed me, hired me, trained me, and later fired me. And what he said to my wife and me there in the lobby at church, he said, yep. He said, but if I had not fired you, Tim, you would not be where you are today. And he was absolutely right. Remember this, fellow recovering ego hogs and fellow emerging leaders. Oftentimes, as emerging leaders, your and my discomfort becomes your and my development. What if God's got you wherever you are now to make you ready for your here and now? That's why God, through me, allowed me to create this EMC squared, this egoholism measurement calculator for correction. But more on that in future episodes. Until now, just keep shining, keep learning, keep growing. And I hope I've given you some words of encouragement, some words of information, and some words of inspiration. If my words have meant anything to you, then like them, share them, and subscribe. Don't forget your homework assignment. Go to my YouTube channel and type in "I was fired 13 times and now I manage leaders, help leaders manage their egos." I'll look for your comments, and I'll see you next Monday. Take care. God bless. Enjoy the weekend. Bye-bye.